And we are recording.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of Across the Aisle. My name is Justin Collins. I'm here with my good buddy Chaz Case. And tonight we are going to discuss why we're voting for our respective candidates. But we're going to do a little something different. We're not going to spend the whole hour and a half talking about why we're not voting for the other guy. At least we're going to limit it as much as we can. But we're actually going to walk through the points that sell us on our prospective candidate and why we think they would actually be the better choice instead of just the least worst choice. Sounds about right?
I think that sounds great.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know, and I've actually never said this in such a public way, I have already voted for Donald Trump. I got a little bitterness in the back of my mouth just saying it, but I voted for Donald Trump. I believe he will be the better president, a much better president than Joe Biden would.
Okay. Well, I have no shame saying that I voted for Joe Biden because of the exact same sentiments. And it's so funny. I mean, it's the reason that we have these debates and these discussions because I think you're a great individual and human being and somebody that I admire as just a person in our community. And for us to have such differing opinions on this makes me believe that even though we have differing opinions, doesn't mean that we can't somehow find some common ground or at least try to understand where the other person is coming from.
That's what it's all about. And you know, it's funny. I was so the director of operations at the restaurant I work at, he's a Syrian refugee, actually Palestinian refugee.
Okay.
He's super into politics, and he was talking to me one day, and he's like, you know what? I know you, like, I like you. I know you're a good person. You hire all of these, people of color and lesser privileged people, and you're good with them. They all respect you. They like you. And I just can't understand how you could vote for Donald Trump. And I'm like, I know, right? It's almost like I'm not evil, or I'm a normal person. I just have my own ideas. Like, who knew? And I think that's something that a lot of us need to wake up to on both sides of the aisle. That
Yes.
Generally speaking, we're not trying to destroy each other with
Yes.
our opinions. And I think that's important to know. And I think maybe we could, for the few who are watching, shine a little light on that and kind of give everyone the same kind of feeling.
I 1,000% agree. I've talked about my neighbors. I live in Northport, Florida, and we have a predominantly conservative population here. And I've always felt safe. My neighbors have always been wonderful. They would do anything for me. And they fly as many Trump signs on the back of their boats and trucks and in their yards. They can't get enough of this guy. But if I would never ask them about their politics, and usually it doesn't even come up because what we're talking about is, hey, can you watch my cats on the weekend because I'm going away? Hey, can you make sure that nobody throws a party at my house because my teenager is going to stay home? And that kind of just neighborly way, I think if you put in 40 hours a week, you're a hard worker, you treat your family well, I don't know, you're my brother in arms. And if you can somehow find your way to compassion and kindness towards other people, the politics is so complex that I find it difficult for anybody to be able to understand foreign policy and drug policy and prison policy, education. And it's something that we're all working towards and we all try to be more informed. But I think by holding people's feet to the fire who are not experts in any of this, people are electrical engineers and teachers and police officers.
I mean, we're not experts at any of this, but
we're not experts on any of this. So I think to hold somebody accountable for who they vote for in this election or that election, I don't know. I think you're asking too much of people who are working really hard just to get by sometimes.
Yeah. Ultimately, we all just want what's best for, at the very least, ourselves.
And that's what I would hope. That I assume that you are not wanting for African Americans and other people of color and minorities to have a worse life, to be discriminated against, people who LGBTQIA plus community. You don't want them to be discriminated against. I think we're all trying to figure out a way for our society to thrive and be better. And I imagine, I hope that you would think the same of me. And so we might have different ideas of how to get there, but I don't think anybody wants the destruction of America. And so it's really disheartening when we hear either side say that this person hates America or this person, wants, their the destruction of our wonderful country, or at least its ideals.
Yeah. So on that note, Chaz, you want to kick us off?
All right.
Why are you voting for Joe? Or why did you vote for Joe?
Okay. Yes.
Excuse me.
I voted for Joe early.
President nominee Biden.
President nominee Biden. So I guess I should, I don't know, caveat this with, he wasn't my first choice. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and felt betrayed by the Democratic Party. And in 2020, it was a very similar situation where I voted for Bernie, but I was a big fan of Andrew Yang. I was really a big fan of a lot of our candidates, except for Biden and Kamala Harris. So here we are, though. And the reason, though, that I support Biden, I've listed a couple of different reasons. I went down their platform and some of the things that they were talking about. Let's see here. We've got the number one, they talk about building a stronger and fairer economy for our country. And so in those ways, I support raising the taxes on the rich. I think FDR was the one who said that people who are wealthy, people who are rich, they are together unanimous in their hatred for me. And I want them to know that I welcome their hatred. And I'm looking for that candidate. I don't think it was Biden. I think Bernie was much more that type of candidate. But I just think that if we're going to be the richest, most powerful nation that the world has ever seen in the history of the world, then it should be a shame that we have over 40 million Americans who live in poverty or at the poverty line, and many more who are just above it, but are just scraping by paycheck to paycheck. We should feel ashamed that we've created that type of economy. And so I think the only way to remedy that, I think, is to level the playing field a little bit. And so one of the reasons that I'm voting for the Democratic Party is they seem to be the only ones that are willing to say that we should increase the taxes on the wealthiest of wealthy Americans. They're also the ones who want to increase the minimum wage. I think that's really important. And I know that it's a balance, right? We can't increase the minimum wage to $100 because then, small businesses can't hire their employees. And so if you're opening an ice cream shop, you can't pay anybody $100 an hour. And for low wage skills, I understand that we should hopefully, most of us, try to build skills as we get older. And there's some jobs that should be for teenagers and people who are just starting out in the workforce. I kind of like Australia's idea on that, where they have a minimum wage for 16-year-olds and a different minimum wage for 28-year-olds with kids. And so maybe we could scale it in a different way, but that's another reason. I want to increase the minimum wage, raise taxes on the wealthy. So there's at least on the economy side. Do we want to go by subject, or do you want me to just start listing it off, or if you want to respond to those two things?
Yeah, no, we can just take it as you deliver it. I just have the one question so far. How does raising taxes bring people out of poverty exactly?
Oh, that's a good question. I think some of the things that we pay for currently take a lot of money out of our milk and eggs money. So lower wage workers are spending their money on things like healthcare, and they're spending their money on daycare, childcare, on college, and those things could essentially be paid for by an economy that looked at college the same way that we look at K through 12 education, that look at daycare and preschool the same way that we look at K through 12. And I don't see anybody I guess we're trying to move towards a more privatized education, but most people are in the Republican Party are talking about vouchers, which means we're still going to spend money on K through 12. We're just going to give parents the choice to send their kids to a private school or a public school, which I'm not totally opposed to. So I want to expand education, especially in the first 5 years, which we know are the most important for child development. And so I think I have a son who's in daycare right now, and it's $800 a month. And we're very lucky to be able to afford that, but it's almost our mortgage payment. And
I'm about to say that.
That's one way that by increasing the taxes on the wealthy and then using that money to provide childcare for low income family members, as well as I'm trying to get my doctorate degree right now, and I just paid $400 for my first class, which is about as cheap as you can get. I looked, and if I was able to, and maybe not for your doctorate degree, but at least, I've got $10,000 or $15,000 worth of debts from my bachelor's degree, and I
Yeah.
paid for my master's out of pocket, but that debt is just another bill that I have to pay each month. And by providing those first 4 years for free to people who are willing to work hard and improve their lot in life, I think is a way that maybe we could bring out more people out of poverty.
See, my problem with that is twofold. Number one, it's the implication that you need that education to be successful. When there are so many people who graduate with 4 or even 8-year degrees and then wind up, I mean, not that being a waitress is a bad thing, but wind up being waiters and waitresses, and don't ever do anything with those degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I also think that the fact that college intuitions are basically backed by the federal government as it is, they can charge whatever the hell they want, and the loans are going to come through and they're going to get the money. But what if that wasn't the case? And what if you literally had to compete to fill your classrooms?
Mm-hmm.
And we have the best price. We'll give you the exact same education as Harvard, but at, a tenth of the price.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like, because I mean, not for nothing, today there's not much you can't learn. I mean, at least as far as skills go, but even some in education, not much you can't learn on YouTube, for free. So to think,
Really
like my fiance she took out like 300 grand in student loans just to become not just to become a psychologist, but to become a psychologist.
300 grand.
Yeah, my house cost that much.
That's right.
And I think that's insane. And it's not like she went to, Harvard School of Psychology or whatever.
Right.
Like she went to a good school, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
this was the budget school essentially, and it still costs that much in student loan, but that's because they know it's guaranteed.
That's insane. You're exactly right. And I want you to know I'm up for other options, because I agree with you. 300,000 is insane. When I look to go into, I was wondering whether I should go to law school or I should go and get my doctorate.
Yeah.
And I went to I guess it's a private online college for my doctorate. And it would be, I think it's like $20,000 to get my doctorate, because I got my master's there, which is really cheap, because, Vanderbilt was asking me to go to their school for the doctorate and it was over $100,000. And so, I mean, but the exact same, and I don't know, maybe right. Vanderbilt's got some special magic that they're doing up there that they're not teaching me at the online education, but the degree is going to be the same. I'm going to have an EDD from either of the colleges. And it is frustrating. I'm up for other options too. If it's not through raising the taxes on the wealthy, maybe there is a private solution, possibly, but those seem to take a lot longer.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe if your back's against the wall and the government just says, hey, we're going to take this money we just give you every year, and now we're not going to. Figure it out. What are you going to do?
It is interesting with all the online technology, like you were saying, Khan Academy, there's a lot of great tools to learn whatever information you have, but the piece of paper is what companies and employers are looking for. So how do we figure out a way to prove that you are knowledgeable enough to do this or that position, and convince employers to accept, the Khan Academy degree that was free over the Vanderbilt degree that costs $100,000, because it does seem like that's a huge part of our economy. And it seems like we're getting to a point where at some point it would be useless. Like, why can't they just, at Vanderbilt, videotape all of their lectures and put it online, and then they could fire all their professors and their teachers, and we could just learn the information. And I mean, maybe you have to have some people to go back and forth with, but a lot of this information can be learned. And
I went to
I'd be out of a job.
Yeah, I went to the #1 culinary school in the country 10 years ago to get
Was that in Orlando? Is that Kaiser?
Yeah, Le Cordon Bleu.
Le Cordon Bleu. Oh, that's amazing, man.
It was. It doesn't exist anymore.
Really?
They got sued into bankruptcy because when they recruited us, they promised us, when you're done with your education, we're going to place you in a high-paying, competitive rate job that's going to cover your $43,000 in tuition for the year.
Mhm.
and that's how you're going to make it back. And then when you get to that point, you find out, oh yeah, unless you want to work at Disney, you got to find your own job, and then
Yeah.
let us know what you do, because that's the last part of your grade to get your degree. So like my brother and I, we both went to school at the same time. We moved to Chicago right out of culinary school,
Okay.
and they have a Le Cordon Bleu there. So we thought they'd be able to network that into getting us into interviews. And they basically said, yeah, just, you got 2 weeks, call us when you find a job. Um, Fortunately for us, we already had a few years restaurant experience going into it. So finding a job wasn't an issue, but one just brilliant young girl, I think she was like a cashier at McDonald's or something going into the culinary school, didn't
Mhm.
get placed in a job and said, well, I'm going to sue you, and did. And then all of a sudden it just rolled into a giant class action lawsuit to
Right.
where they were paying back years worth of back tuition to these students who graduated from there.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I decided to try to hop on board, because I mean, hell, if I could get my student loans paid for at least, why not? They
Right.
said, well, unfortunately, you found a job too soon after school, so that doesn't really, you don't really qualify for that. It's like,
Well, and
can't
that's
prove
where
a little bit.
I have sympathy for people. I saw, it was I think an Elizabeth Warren when she was running for the Democratic nomination, that a man went up there and said, "Hey, I saved up, a ton of vacation money for my son to go to college, and I paid for his college, and now
Yeah.
he's got a great job. I'd like my money back. If
Hmm.
you're going to pay for everybody's college in the future, then and you're going to pay back all these student loans." All these
Yeah.
people who went on vacations that I wasn't able to afford because I did the right thing, then I went, he's got a good point. I thought that was very, and maybe she could have answered it in a way that was like, well, listen, this is, moving forward, we have to do the right thing. And unfortunately, we can't go backwards in that way. But yeah, I would be pretty upset if I was that guy who lost a lot of my, the one thing that we have that's more precious than anything is our time on this earth. And
Yeah.
if he gave up a lot of that time to do quote unquote the right thing and save up the money, um, it would be a shame to give that to other people who
Yeah.
didn't do that.
Yeah. And not for nothing. I mean, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I want to say it's somewhere around a third of people go to college, maybe less. Um,
I should know this. I think it
don't
might be
see,
like a quarter. You're right. Or at
yeah,
least
somewhere in
who
there.
graduate. I think it's like 25% who have a bachelor's
Yeah.
degree.
So I don't see why the rest of us should pay for that, especially when most people go to college not even knowing what they want to do. They have at least freshman year all the way up to the first 4 years is basically Rumspringer. It's just like, parties and drinking and experimenting and all that. And it's like, I don't want to pay for that.
No,
I
you're
don't want the taxes to go to that. Um,
I've talked
and
with some other my conservative friends. I don't mean to cut you off, but that maybe we could, we need more doctors, especially if we're going to do some of the democratic ideas like universal health care. We need to make sure that there aren't those waiting lines because we've got plenty of doctors. So maybe we could um, subsidize some of the more needed professions. And so, like, if you get a degree in underwater basket weaving, I think is the cliche, then maybe we don't subsidize underwater basket weaving. It's a great thing. College is going to offer it. You can have fun with your friends, but we're only going to subsidize the types of jobs that are going to benefit the country as a whole.
yeah, or alternatively, instead of subsidizing anything,
Okay.
stop guaranteeing these loans to the banks federally,
Mm-hmm.
and that would cause the banks to actually have to look and say, yeah, no, I'm not giving you $100,000 to get a degree in lesbian dance theory or something like that. Like, just no, I'm not gonna, there's not going to be a return on that. And they're literally forced to look at it case by case and say, will I get my money back? Yeah, psychologist, yeah, I'll get that back, no problem. Underwater basket weaving, what would you even do with that? Nope, not happening. And then think about how many less people we would have in student loan debt because they wouldn't be able to get the loan.
Well, that's a good point. And as long as that wouldn't disproportionately affect people who come in with low incomes, who don't have the
Yeah,
collateral or the backing that the credit score or something like that that might
you just need the
disqualify
grades
them
though.
from
It's the thing. All you
what's
need
up.
is the grades. You just got to get good grades in high school. I mean, I understand it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's also not the hardest thing in the world.
Well, it's not the hardest thing in the world if you don't have the problems and challenges that many people face who come from low income backgrounds, who come from parents who are not wonderful. And that's something
Yeah.
I deal with every day, from these kids who just have the greatest hearts and are trying so hard, and just from some of the kids who don't have the mental capacity. And it's something that I think is very taboo for us to talk about. And I do believe that every child can learn. And I believe that, we want them to reach their highest potential, but some people's highest potential was not going to be a medical doctor. And
Yeah.
it is a taboo subject to talk about, that IQ and how far we can. And I'm not the person to tell any student, so I push every student that I have to the farthest of their abilities.
Yeah.
And I think we should, but I think it should be fair to say that there are some people who are not going to have the mental capabilities to have the skills to do a job that's going to give them a high paying wage. And so I feel for those people. Like, if you're a wonderful human being, but you're just only going to be talented enough to make, $15 an hour, $20 an hour, no matter how hard you work in life, that should be fine. If you're putting in 40 hours and you're an American citizen, I think we should guarantee you a life that is worth living, and you should be able to have vacations like everybody else. And yes, in some way, our meritocracy really benefits people who come from backgrounds where parents have went to college and parents who are well off, and people who just win the genetic lottery. And I know that I benefit in some ways from that already, but I know that I'm definitely not the upper echelon. Like, if I worked my butt off, I'm still not going to be the top lawyer in the United States. There are people who are just smarter than I am, that their brain is working faster. And it's not that I should punish them for that, but maybe we could even it out a little bit for those people on the very lower end who end up not living their best life.
I don't know. I feel like if we're gonna push something at a federal level to help people get better, higher paying jobs, I think we should start doing that with like trades. Like HVAC people make 6 figures a year. Linemen, plumbers make excellent livings. You know what I mean? And these are all jobs that are like looked down upon because they don't have the degree from the $200,000 education in school or whatever. But these are excellent lives these people live. They get vacations, they get overtime, they get, benefits, the works.
And we need them. I mean, absolutely. I 1,000% agree with you. I mean, I think in New York City, and I don't remember the date or anything, but the I don't know what the proper term is, sanitation workers went on strike. And you don't have to go very long to find out how much we need people to work in the sanitation industry, and how important and amazing those people's jobs are for our community. And so, yeah, I 1,000% agree with you. It drives me crazy sometimes when I'm teaching students who know, even in 8th grade, I had a student who started his own lawn company by 16, and I knew at 14, and he knew at 14, this whole academic thing was not for him. He was a great worker, a really polite, wonderful kid, but I seen him at 16, and he's making more than I am as a teacher, because he started his own company and he's working with his dad and he's about to do it himself. It was just like, why are we wasting so much time sometimes on things that these kids know that they don't want to do, especially in high school? Maybe we could say there's a pathway towards college and you could go down this academic route, or maybe there's a pathway to trade. And we have a little bit of that, but I agree with you. It could definitely be built stronger and with less stigma, for sure.
I literally chose to make being a chef my career path because I was in high school. I was working in restaurants pretty much all through high school. My first job at 15 all the way to now. I've been working in restaurants. But at that point, my mom hit me with this list of, you need to do this and this and this and pass these 2 classes, and then you got to retake this class and do this one online, and that's how you get a Bright Future scholarship, and that's how you go to college. And I'm like, I'm going to go to culinary school.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
And it was literally, I mean, it was my passion at the time. It's the only thing I've really ever loved to do professionally. But it was also like, there, now you're off my back and I don't have to do any of this shit to try to go to college because I don't want to go to college. I have no interest. And LaCourt on Blue, it gave me 2-year associate's degree in science. Like we took math and science and literature and psychology and all of that. But it was 15 months and I was done. It's like, yeah, that's about all I could do. I couldn't do 4 years of college.
And it gave you a path that you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. It gave you a reason to why you were studying the math. It wasn't just to study the math, even though you didn't know what you were going to do. You needed to study the math because you were going to hopefully use it in your, in your degree or in your profession. And
Just to finish school, really, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I hate doing stuff like that. I wish we would structure school in a way that it had a purpose. My kids ask me all the time, like, what in the world do I need this for? When am I ever going to use this? And
I was that student.
yeah. And oftentimes, I mean, I teach civics in 8th grade government. And so a lot of this is just to be a normal citizen, you're going to be confronted with who you should vote for and how your government works. And it's a good background base knowledge that you need to have. But there are definitely classes that I took in high school and even my first 2 years in college that, chemistry is great. And I wish I knew more chemistry, but because of the way that it was taught and it has nothing to do with my career. And I've had a wonderful career so far and hopefully will ascend in the ranks in education without the need to know the periodic table and how to add chemical formulas up. Not that that's not great knowledge.
I have not used Pythagorean theorem one time in 15 years.
Especially now that we could Google it. If I needed to know, you don't need to put that in my brain. I got it.
It's wasted space. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got Google. And so I feel like we're using an antiquated education system when what we should be doing is finding out people's passions. We should be getting them in the most engaging classes that they choose for themselves. And then when they ask, why am I here? You chose it. If you don't want to be here, then leave. You're wasting our time and your time. And it is sad. We force kids to go to school for 12 years. And especially once they get to that age of like 15, 16, 17 years old, and they still don't really have that choice of what they really want to do. It's it's a babysitting enterprise that we're just like, we're forcing you to do something even if you don't want to do it. It's a weird system.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's essentially daycare at this point.
Well, that's I mean, we talk about this a lot at school. I mean, it is daycare. This is why we had to reopen the schools so that people could go back to work. It's almost impossible to fail a student. I mean, you have to really, really try to fail anytime before 9th grade. And there are reasons because of that. We don't want kids to fail. They have a higher dropout rate if they fail more than once. But the accountability, below 9th grade is just not there. And it's because we're a daycare. I mean, I don't, there's nothing wrong with that, but I wish more people would acknowledge that aspect. I mean, we try our best, but they give us an impossible task with too many students, too many accommodations, not enough time. And so, well, that's what I'm working to change. Hopefully I'll figure it out one day. That was just on the economy. We're moving right along. I apologize.
No, you're good. Hit me.
All right. So the next one, we've talked a little bit about this already, but the right to choose, I think, is really important. And I think the Democrats are at least on there with the right to choose. And I understand some of your opposition with, the late term abortions, which are, in my view, it's a very small percentage. I think less than 1% a year are those third trimesters, which I think we both agree are worrisome. But I just think it's better to leave that up to the doctors and the families who are having to make that gut-wrenching decision. And it's an interesting thing where I feel like the Republicans are usually the least government is the best government. And so I'm not exactly sure how the government getting involved in that decision about, people who probably already got a room picked out and a name for that child, having to make that decision after they find out about some medical situation. But I understand that it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white. There are some gray areas, but I tend to err on the side of leaving that to the woman to decide. And so that's one of the issues where I think Democrats tend to side with me a little bit more than the Republicans.
Yeah. My major contention, and we've touched on this topic in almost every episode we've done so far. But if the argument is that this is a life or it's not a life, the federal government really only has two jobs, and one of them is to protect life.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to me that on a federal level they say, yeah, it's okay. Like if the states want to do it, like we've said before, it should kind of fall under the 10th Amendment. If the states are cool with it, fine, but it's not in the Constitution. Nothing in the Constitution implies that it's okay. It's not in the 14th Amendment. I don't care how you stretch it. So they shouldn't have their hands in it at all. And if they are going to have their hands in it, it definitely shouldn't be on the side of, yeah, it's okay. Because again, if at some point in the process it becomes its own life, it is the federal government's job to protect life. It's one of two jobs they have: protect our rights, protect our lives. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. It's you're gonna have to tell me when life begins. And I think that's just that the fundamental argument in that abortion debate is when that begins. And for people like Amy Coney Barrett, who follows the Catholic religion, in some cases, and I think for a long time, and maybe even still today, even though 98% of Catholics use birth control is essentially a form of stopping God's plan. And so the church is against birth control. And then maybe, okay, the day after pill.
She's also an originalist, though, so that kind of overrides.
Well, she's with the Constitution, which I would argue that while the people who wrote the Constitution, many of them were absolute geniuses. I don't know how else to put it. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, a lot of these people who wrote the Constitution, while for sure they had flaws, they were brilliant men, spoke many different languages, and foresaw a future that must have been really hard at that time. But I just don't think that they got everything right. And I think they had to compromise a lot. I mean, the whole reason that we have the Senate is because we had small states who were like, we're not going to give Virginia all the power, so screw your union unless we have, equal representation. But what that has given us is we have, I think, 7 or 8 states that have 40 million people in them, and they get 30 senators, while California has 55 million or so people, and they get 2 senators. And so we've got 40 million people who have enormously more power in our Senate than 55 million people. And this was James Madison pulling his hair out, but just trying to use that the great compromise to like just keep the union together. And maybe there are times when we need the Constitution regardless, and we need states to just come together. But that's the reason that I'm not an originalist. I feel like Joe Rogan's got a great joke about this, that if Thomas Jefferson woke up, he'd look around and he'd say, what, I wrote this fucking thing with a feather pen. You guys haven't created any new shit? Like, come on. And so we have created a lot of new stuff. Sorry for cursing again. But yeah, I think that in some ways, originalist is like, well, we didn't have machine guns and tanks and nuclear bombs. So the Second Amendment, either we need to change it or we need to start talking about what they would have meant during this time.
Well, we have. You can't have tanks and you can't have machine guns. So that's pretty cut and dry.
You're right. But we could have triggers that as fast as you can pull your finger, you can pull a bullet can fly out.
Yeah, why
and
not?
So, and okay, maybe. But I mean, that's essentially a machine gun. Or you could buy, what was the thing that the Las Vegas shooter guy had? What's that called?
Bumper, I think it's called.
Yeah, like a bumper where you don't really have to, it pulls it for you, right?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, and so it becomes a machine gun, and that's not illegal. That was another one of my things, universal background checks and the gun show loopholes.
Yeah, but the thing is, if abortion is going to be a part of the Constitution, it should have happened constitutionally. A law should have been passed, not just, hey, Supreme Court, what do you think? And then there it is. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm so with you on that. We give way too much power to the 9 people on the court because of the lack of leadership and ability to have conversations like me and you are having right now in our Congress. I mean, it's if there's anything I'm ashamed of, it's the inability of the people that we elect to Congress to be able to come up with compromises to work together to create these laws that we need. Because when we don't have the laws, what we get is lawyers who march it up to the Supreme Court, and then we have 9 people who end up deciding law, and 9 for 330 million people. That's a lot of power in the hands of 9 people.
Well, yeah, because that's never what it was supposed to be. It's not supposed to be another member of the legislative branch, excuse me. It's the judicial branch. It's supposed to follow law, follow the Constitution, interpret law. They're not supposed to make laws. I don't know why or when or how we got to the point where we can just be like, oh, well, we're not going to get it through Congress. Hey, Supreme Court, help us out. It's like, yeah, done, law. It's like, that's what drives me nuts, is that's not your job. You were never supposed to have that power. I don't know how you got that power. I don't know who gave you that power, but you're not supposed to have that power.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. Lawyers can frame the situation, the lawsuit, in a way that essentially brings in the Bill of Rights. And so the 14th Amendment's a huge one, where you got equal protection. If you're born in the United States, you're a citizen, and all citizens are supposed to be protected by the law equally. And so in some times where I feel like, thank God we've got the Supreme Court who sided with gay Americans who were being discriminated against in states like Mississippi. And Mississippi was never going to legalize gay marriage, or at least it wasn't going to be for a long time. And without the Supreme Court decision saying that they're being discriminated against and their 14th Amendment isn't being upheld, we would have never got this gay marriage legalized across the United States, or at least for a long time. But you're right. I mean, that's something that's on my side. And so if they did that on the other side, like this abortion case, if they overturn Roe v. Wade, I'd be very upset. And I would have wished it would, by our federal government's legislative branch who creates the laws, the people who represent us, who are as close to us as they can be.
Yeah. Roe v. Wade's not getting overturned. I'm just going to call that now. I don't care how many conservatives we put in the Supreme Court. It's set. It's just not going to happen.
Okay. So, well, that would be, because that's something I'm worried about. And that makes sense that maybe that doesn't go into your voting
no,
because you're not worried about it.
No, it's not going to be overturned. As unconstitutional as I believe the decision was in the first place,
right?
It's just not going to happen. It won't. I don't know. Like, you would literally have to put Donald Trump on the Supreme Court maybe to make that happen, but it's not going to happen. I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on that one.
Yeah, there would be a huge uproar in the country, of course, and
even though most states wouldn't
right.
make abortion illegal, I don't think most states probably would. Some states would for sure.
Yeah,
but I don't think most would in that scenario.
No, so I think most states would keep abortion legal and available for people. You're right, but there's some states. I'm looking at you, Mississippi. What's up? That would I don't know why I'm not picking on it, but it is. It's Mississippi, Alabama. We know who you are, and that's okay. I mean, people have their differences of opinions and differences of beliefs and where they come from, and that's why we're having these kind of discussions.
Yeah. All right. So Biden backs raising taxes and the right to choose. Where does that leave you? What's next?
So yes, I want to raise taxes. The rich, I'm coming for you. As far as the right to choose, I support women's right to choose. We kind of got onto expanding public education to include preschool as well as the first 4 years of college. Universal health care, that's the next one that I'm a big proponent of. Now, Biden doesn't go all the way there, but he continues to
putting the right man in charge to do it.
Especially if he puts Bernie Sanders in charge of healthcare and health and human services.
Bernie wrote the policy. He had Bernie write the policy for the website.
I wrote the damn policy. That's right, Mister. I wrote the damn bill. That's exactly right. So I'm all for Bernie Sanders getting in there, and however we can get to universal basic healthcare, I think that's the path forward. I think the main argument against that is that it's going to cost a lot of people who work in the insurance industry a lot of jobs, a lot of money. But overall, I think that having everybody in the pool will help. making it not for profit will stop a lot of these phone calls that people have to make when they get cancer and they go, sorry, you didn't sign up in the right time, or you didn't sign up for the right policy, so we can't cover you, because it's a for-profit industry. And when you have a for-profit industry in a life or death situation, I think it just causes some really bad outcomes and some tragic stories. And I would rather just say that if you're an American citizen in the richest and the most advanced country in the world, that if you get sick, we're here for you. Because I think the way that I heard somebody describe it, that Democrats are so bad at advertising these types of positions, explaining these. They should say something like, in World War II, my grandfather never left anybody behind on Normandy. We carried everybody. And we should do that here in America. But we don't frame it like that. We're like, you gotta care about the poor citizens. Like, we want to pull at Republicans' heartstrings, and we forget they don't have heartstrings. They have, I'm just kidding. But they care about numbers and facts, and they care about fairness, and they care about loyalty. And we never seem to appeal to their American sense of pride. And why don't we say that, look, we're the richest, greatest nation on the world. It's a shame that we let people die of cancer or go bankrupt because they got sick. Like, we can't figure that out. I think we can, and we should.
Yeah. So I agree. Our system is not the best. Well, no, I'll rephrase. Our system is not perfect, not even close to perfect. But on that note, we lead the planet in medical innovation. We lead the planet in medical publishing. We lead the planet in survival, or 5-year survival of cancer, recovery in the emergency room. Damn near every medical statistic you can name, we lead. Now, it costs a lot of money. Yes. I have a problem agreeing with the idea that healthcare is a right. Now, what is a right? A right originally was something promised to you, guaranteed to you, not by government, but by God or whomever the higher power is. It pre-exists government. Government's job is not to give you rights. Government's job is to protect the rights you already had. And the difference between a right and a commodity is that a commodity requires a person to provide that to you. You're doing it at the expense of somebody else, essentially. You need the doctors. Well, if it's a right, then you have the right to learn medicine and to learn healthcare. But to say you have the right to somebody else's essentially products that they offer in life, just the same as, you're not entitled to free food at my restaurant. Yeah, I'm sorry you're hungry, but I got a business to run.
Yeah.
So yeah, there probably has to be a better way of meeting somewhere in that middle, or even getting beyond that. But by calling it a right, I think that's where a lot of people get lost, because these guys, these doctors are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars getting this medical degree, and now you're saying I'm not going to get paid what I should get paid because now my job, my profession is a right. Like, I don't know where the compromise is in that.
That's a really good point. And we've done the math on teachers, and I get paid $50,000 a year, whether I work with 22 students or 122 students, whether I work 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day, and I'm capped at 50 grand a year because I'm a government service worker. And while I believe the work is necessary and wonderful, I agree with you. It is it's something like $2.50, $3 an hour is what I'm getting paid per student or something like that. Like, if I got paid minimum wage per student, I'd be making over $100,000 a year. And of course, we can't afford that as a country. And so, so my pay is being stifled because it's not a private enterprise. And you're right, doctors are probably going to have to lose money because they're not going to be able to charge the higher prices because the government's going to tell you this is what we're paying you. And I can see that's a good argument.
I'm sure a lot of people become doctors because they want to help. Like, I'm sure that exists. That's
I think
probably
almost all. Yeah.
I don't know about almost all, but a lot.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of people become doctors because they think of the house and the car and the respect and the everything else that comes with being a doctor. I mean,
I
I'm
mean, it's
sure of
gotta,
it. It's
right.
got to exist. Um, and I don't know which one there's more of, but
Well, I'll
I
tell you,
feel like
nobody goes into teaching because they think they're going to get the respect in the house and
chef
the
too.
car.
Yeah,
I don't
chef
know.
too.
Do we want more doctors who go into being a doctor because only for the health reasons and only because of the philanthropy, or do we want more
Tend to bust
doctors for
their
the cars
asses
and the
though.
respect?
Yeah, they tend to bust their asses for it though. And if you were
That's
to
true.
go to medical school and become a doctor and find out, it doesn't matter if you see 2 patients or 200 patients, this is it. How many patients do you think that doctor's going to see?
Yeah, I'm gonna see two if I can.
Damn
Um,
right.
yeah, and so that's a really good point. And I think just having this conversation, this discussion, is what I wish we would be hearing more about on our cable news. That
Yeah.
okay, so I want to make sure that the poorest American doesn't go bankrupt for getting cancer, because who knows who's going to get this and who's not going to get this, and it doesn't matter if you're a hardworking person or the richest person in the world, this can affect anybody, and so we should protect our own, right?
Sure.
But you're right. I also want to create a system where we are the medical innovation leaders of the world, like we are, and many, like you said, the 5-year cancer survival rate in the United States is higher than almost anywhere in the world, or is the highest than anywhere in the world. And maybe that costs a little bit more. So how do we figure that out? How do we solve the problems of covering everybody while also solving the problems of continuing to have innovation, continuing to have some sort of mechanism that drives motivation? Because
Well, you're going to tax the top 1%. That's how you do it.
I'm I'm down. I'm coming for you. No, just nobody's gonna elect me.
Yeah, well, me neither.
I would float a maximum wage, I think but yeah, anyway, so we're getting off topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think maybe there's a way, maybe we could figure out on another topic or another podcast discussion, we could hone in on like how could we make sure that nobody goes bankrupt because they got cancer. We make sure
And
that
yet
everybody
doctors are
can
still
get
incentivized to be doctors.
exactly. I
Mhm.
think there's got to be some way that we can do that. And I know a lot of people end up going, well, look in Canada at the wait times. Okay, well, all right, that's a problem. So let's figure out how do you have universal healthcare and eliminate the wait times? Or how do you have universal healthcare and, give incentives to
Well,
doctors? Maybe there's
how
private.
Canada did it is that they also have a private sector. It just
Right.
costs more. Mm-hmm.
And so if you're rich, you can afford to get your hip
You don't wait in
surgery
line.
faster. No
Mhm.
wait lines.
Nope.
It just sucks to be poor. That's what it
Damn
is.
right.
Get
Damn right.
money. Lil Wayne said it best.
Yeah.
Get money, make money.
Yeah, I was just browsing through the marketplace because open enrollment's coming up, and it's just like I can't find shit for a good policy. And if
No.
it's a halfway decent policy, I'm looking at $350 a month. Like
And
I don't think that often, like
no. I mean, you should be helping your wife study tonight and stop doing this podcast. And just kidding. Fingers crossed. I'll be my thoughts and prayers will be with her tomorrow. That's a lot of hard. All right. So next thing so universal healthcare is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Protection of LGBTQIA plus community. This is something where I feel like the Democratic Party is all alone in this world, where they're trying to make sure that people who are of a different sexual orientation are not being discriminated against. I feel like, transgender, like how many people are worried right now about transgender bathrooms? I haven't heard about it in 2 years, but when that was a huge deal, I had people, protesting in Target, standing in front of the boys' bathroom that they were going to allow women to go in there who were transgender. And it seems like that's such not a big deal, but for some reason,
almost as if it was by design
to have people protest that
over something as stupid about who's going to use what bathrooms. That was the first question I asked. Was
okay.
Well, what bathrooms were they using up to this point?
Exactly. They were using whatever bathroom they felt most comfortable using, and when they were in the bathroom, they were using the bathroom.
Yeah, and then they throw the scare tactic of, well, do you want your daughter in the bathroom with a man, or your wife in the bathroom with or do you want a poor transgender man getting raped in the men's room? And it's like,
yeah.
is this something that happens a lot? Like, what
No,
are we
and
talking about
does
here?
being transgender give you the right to be a pedophile? Like, no, or a sexual predator. And how did it, like, are there not lesbians who go into the women's bathroom or gay people who go into
Right,
it seems like a very silly
right,
argument to equate somebody who's transgender with also being a sexual predator. And
right.
and that just drove me crazy. And one of the reasons that I end up supporting the Democratic Party is because I felt like a lot of that hatred, and I think it's hatred from misunderstanding. I think it's a hatred because they don't know anybody. Because just the same way that you meet somebody of a different race, a different color, a nationality, whatever, you realize, oh, they're just a human being like anybody else after 5 minutes of a conversation. I think that lack of understanding and sometimes humility, maybe, I don't know, compassion leads to being a little scared. And then it comes out as, being bigotry or hatred. But yeah, I only see that. I tend to see that on the conservative side, and so that's one of the reasons that I'm supporting Joe Biden. Any
Okay.
Is that something where you would push back on the conservative side, or
Um, I honestly don't think as many conservatives give a shit as
okay,
we would believe they do. Which honestly, and speaking as a straight white cisgender male,
right?
I feel like the goal for all of us at the end of the day is that nobody gives a shit what color you are, nobody gives a shit who you're sleeping with, and nobody gives a shit what you identify as. We're all just doing it, like who cares?
Yeah,
Not to say I don't give a shit about you because you do this. I just don't give a shit about that about you. You know what I mean? Like that's
right.
not an important
The content of
defining
your
characteristic.
character is what is most important.
I
Period.
mean,
End of the day. It's
that
something
was
where
the dream.
if I had to push back on the liberals, not even if I had to, I will push back on the liberals. Sometimes when they say that, I read something today. I never retweet anybody or tweet back to anybody, but I saw this and I had to figure out what her Twitter handle was, and I went and talked to her. Um, I'll have to check my Twitter if she responded, but she said the last thing we need is another white male, like Jon Stewart was coming back. He's going to do another political
Oh, cool.
show. And I love Jon Stewart. I think he opened the doors for so many people of color, of different genders, to talk about politics and just the way to talk about politics. And so he's coming back, and she was like, the last thing we need is a white man named John. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? It has
Yep.
absolutely nothing to do with who he is as a human
Yep.
being, but you've marginalized him by his
That's
color
it.
and by his
We're all
gender
in these
and by his,
boxes.
can't do that. I'm not in that camp with the liberals, and I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of them go down that identity politics. And while I'm as liberal as they come, I can't go that far. I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and honestly, policy wise, I'm not sure what the imminent threat on the LGBTQIA plus. It's always something. I don't understand what the imminent threat to them is through the Trump presidency. You can obviously, the obvious one to be thrown out is that Trump tried to ban transgenders from the military.
right,
Sucks, yes, but the military has never been just this beacon of all inclusivity. Like, I wasn't allowed to be a Navy SEAL because I had flat feet. Like, it takes very little. Like, you can't have a desk job in the military if you have asthma. Like, imagine being out in, as they say in the military, in the shit,
yeah,
and you don't have your hormone treatment for the day.
mm-hmm.
Like, you got to imagine that's going to cause problems or mental issues or something. I'm not a doctor. I play one on TV.
No, yeah,
But it's not like you could just, okay, go out into the desert for 3 months. Should be fine. Like you require externalities to make
yeah,
that happen. So in that sense, I kind of get it. I understand why there would be a limitation to that. It wasn't actually passed, I don't think. I'm pretty sure that was reversed.
yeah, I don't
But
know.
beyond that, I'm not sure what the imminent threat is on the LGBTQAI community through the Trump presidency.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think I talked on this a little bit last time that a Pete Buttigieg supporter who was obviously a Democrat found out that he was gay and was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy's gay. Then of course I'm not supporting him, and that was a Democrat. So we've definitely got people in the Democratic
Did you hear
Party who.
that his husband's a beard?
What's that?
There was a rumor back during the primaries that his husband wasn't actually gay. Like his husband's brother, I think, came out or something that is like, my brother's not gay. He's just doing this to help Pete get into the White House or something to the tune of that. Pete's brother. Somebody said one of them wasn't actually gay. I don't recall.
That would be an interesting lifestyle to take on.
How could a country that is so anti-LGBTQ, how could that be a selling point unless we're not that anti-LGBTQ?
Yeah, well, I think we're definitely moving past it. I had a student today actually ask me, is Amy Coney Barrett going to make life harder for gay people in the United States? And so what I said was like, okay, well, the Catholic faith believes that, as far as I know, and I don't know if I told her all of this, but the Catholic faith doctrine says that a man shouldn't lie with a man in Leviticus, blah, 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 right? And so the only way that this could happen is if there's a lawsuit and the lawsuit goes to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court says that, gay marriage does not disqualify somebody from being discriminated against. Or there was a case a couple of years ago about a gay couple walking into a cake shop. And it's an interesting conversation because where does the artistic line go? I mean, can you say that you're not going to serve a gay couple because you're an artist as a chef? No, that seems ridiculous.
No, but that's not what he was saying. He was saying, I'll bake you a cake. I won't bake you a wedding cake.
Right.
And yeah, it's a dumb line to draw, but at the end of the day, the market should have taken care of them, not the federal government.
Well, and that's the discussion, right? I mean, where is that line? Because that's a dumb line to draw, but can you say, like, I'm not going to bake you a wedding cake because you are an interracial couple? Or
right. And the extreme counter argument is, are you going to bake a Nazi cake?
Exactly. If I write songs, and so is somebody going to ask me to write a love song? No problem. You're going to write me a song about Hitler being the greatest? Sorry, I'm not going to do it. And is the government going to come after me and tell me that, no,
you actually have the right to refuse service for any reason.
And so I think it's a great Supreme Court case. I want to hear the greatest minds come and figure this out and get all the legalities to make it crystal clear for people where that line is. But yeah, you're right. I think that's a good point. If you don't have any insecurities about the LGBTQ community, that makes me feel a little bit better. The reason you're voting for Trump has nothing to do with discriminating against
no.
in any way that community, and that's good. Okay. So
no, and beyond that, I'm not sure. I don't know what the imminent threat is in Trump becoming the president a second term to the LGBT community. If someone could explain it to me, I'd be happy to hear it, but I don't know what it is.
I will. So next week, I'll talk to some of my friends who are in that community who I'm sure are screaming at me right now, telling me, why aren't you? So I'll talk to them and maybe get some more information, and then we'll rehash it out next week.
Sure.
During our civil war that happens next Thursday when we don't know who the president is. All right. Not to get on too much of Donald Trump's character, because I don't want to make this about not Donald Trump, but what I think from the podcasts that I've listened to that are long form with Biden, who's talking for over an hour, his understanding of, there's one, and I think it's with, we read all the self-help books in my house. I think just almost as like the same way you exercise, like we're not getting anything new from them, but we just kind of have to keep reading them to kind of give you that same feeling or whatever. You keep practicing all that kind of stuff. But one of the girls, Girl Wash Your Face, wrote some book, but I think she's got a podcast and she interviewed Joe Biden. I think this was her. And it was like over an hour long. You just kind of got to know the kind of person he was, the family he grew up on, his values. And he seems like a person who would be able to relate with the average, no pun intended, Joe. And in this time where we've lost so many people and in this crisis, I feel like he's somebody who intimately understands the loss of human life, having come in to the Senate at 30 years old after the insane tragedy of losing his wife and his daughter, remarrying, and then, just 4 or 5 years ago, losing his son, the brain cancer, who had 9% body fat when he was in Iraq. I mean, just so tragic. A guy who he called us 2.0 and was the attorney general of a state. So I think in this time, if we had to choose two people, somebody who absolutely understands loss and has empathy for that kind of loss, or somebody who has shown that he has a very hard time showing empathy in any way.
Didn't Trump just lose his brother like this past year or something like that?
I didn't, and he has. I'm not saying that he hasn't experienced loss. Having a way to empathize with others and their loss, I'm not sure he's able to communicate that in a way that is as effective as Joe Biden as a leader. I mean, I like my war heroes not captured kind of thing. It's like, what are you saying? And you're right. I mean, you said last time, he individualizes his attacks. So he might not say that about all soldiers. He said that about John McCain, because John McCain would fight him or go back and forth with him. But it's just like, how could you possibly say things like that to individuals? Because it reflects on all individuals who were captured. Are these not war here? And so that's the part where one of the reasons I'm voting for Joe Biden is because I think out of the two, the pick your poison, as we were joking earlier, the lesser of the two.
Yeah. So what about, he shows empathy. I don't know that I've ever seen Trump publicly show real empathy. But you got to imagine every single State of the Unions, and even at the VP debate, they brought the family of the girl who was captured in the Middle East and was tortured for however long while Joe Biden just let it happen, or whatever their claim was. So I would have to imagine, at least privately, those families, to even become involved in this, he would have to show them some sort of empathy, or at least a little bit like, I'm fighting for you, like I'm going to make this right for you, or something to the tune of that.
That's a good point. And if we do elect Trump, then I hope that is true.
I can't imagine these families are just willingly props for him without at least that. I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. It's tough when we don't know them personally. It's like we see what is portrayed in
the media.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And as far as, I don't know, being a leader, empathy's great, yes. Character is great, yes. But in 47 years of politics, Joe Biden's been wrong on every single foreign policy decision he's ever sided on. This dates back from the Gulf War to the Iraq War to Libya to across the board. You can go down his entire record. There's not one he's been right on. He's been on the wrong side of every single one of them. And I don't know, to think now at 80, this is where he gets it together and he picks the right one. I don't know. Your record speaks for itself at this point. And then as far as domestic policy, I don't know one position that he hasn't changed his mind or changed his position at least once. He was, he was the main proponent of the crime bill in '94. He had disproportionately people of color arrested for crack because it wasn't cocaine, essentially. And now all of a sudden he's going to be the one to legalize marijuana federally. And it's like, I don't buy it that you've just grown and evolved over the years more than I buy it like you'll just go whichever the way the wind blows you. Yeah, do this number. Where is the left taking me? This way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost
that's
like
what
we
I'm
should have
going out
elected
of.
somebody who's been saying the same thing for 35 years of his career. And
Right.
it would have been
He
nice
doesn't
if
seem
we
like a
had
very
done that.
convicted man. He doesn't seem like a man with a lot of conviction to me.
No, I think that's a really good. I mean, you know, it's not like I was a genius in 2006 and the Democratic Party was not on board with gay marriage. We were still
Yeah.
calling for civil unions. It was,
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing the future. This was just like, how could you not be for not discriminating against a whole group of people? And
Yeah.
I'm sure there are things, I hope that I will be able to evolve and grow. And I'm sure there are blind spots in my morality and my decision making now that will change. And I hope to be able to explain those changes and those differences. And I think he's done a very poor job of explaining why he was for civil unions in 2006 and now why he's a proponent of gay marriage.
I mean, he essentially created the don't ask, don't tell policy of the military too.
Well, he was definitely a big part of the Democratic Party when Bill Clinton was passing that through. You're exactly right. I mean, what a stupid policy. And
Yeah.
I think, there are some things with Obama the same way. I mean, how do you not legalize marijuana? As a person who smoked marijuana, as we know, we have over 500,000 people arrested every year, the hundreds of thousands of people who have been in jail and have records for this. How do you not do this as a person who smoked marijuana as an individual, whose life could have been ruined had you been caught doing this stuff by the wrong police officer? And what I imagine is that Obama's got the weight of so many other issues. You find out about that foreign policy, you find out about the threats that are really facing the United States, and you realize this is just not even close to our number one issue. And that maybe there's some political strategy going along. Like, had he came out for marijuana legalization, that it would have pushed it down the road 25 years. And he looked at the states who were already legalizing it and kind of took a political calculation. And maybe the same with gay marriage with Joe Biden. But that's the part we all hate about politics, that we wish they would just come out and say, what do you believe? And if you really believe that, then what made you change your mind? And I need you to be really direct here, because if you don't tell me why you changed your mind, it makes you sound like you were saying, like you just flip flop and you just go wherever the wind's blowing. And that's problematic. I agree with you. I mean, I like where the wind is blowing him. And so I guess I'm kind of riding on those coattails while it's going that way, but it does make me nervous that if the coattails start going another way that I don't approve of, I'm not so sure I can trust them. And I think that's a fair criticism.
If you're going to tell me that it's going to be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who legalize marijuana on a federal level, I'm taking the under. They're literally responsible for so many people being in jail for marijuana, the two of them, thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't buy it. I'm not buying
that's
it.
That's a good reason. I think that's a very fair argument, and it's very frustrating as a Democrat or as a human being who sees some of these issues. But I don't see this anywhere on the Republicans' agenda. In fact, the only people who are trying to stop this from happening, whoever tried to stop gay marriage from happening, were the Republicans. And so it's like you pick your poison. And right now, the wind seems to be blowing for those issues in the right direction on the Democratic Party. And if Biden's going to be willing to be blown in that, don't take that out of context. But if Biden's willing to be blown in that direction, then I'll ride those kite winds.
Yeah, I just don't see that being of the litany of directions the wind will blow him. I don't see that being one of the first or even top 10 stops.
Yeah, you might be right.
It sounds good. It's a good selling point. I mean, it definitely, the young vote's got to look at that, be like, yeah, man, legalize weed. Like, I've been saying, excuse me, I've been saying that since I was 16 years old.
It's just
that I've never not smoked weed, legal or not, so yeah, as cool as that would be, even to me, it's like, yeah, not for nothing. Like, we have it in Florida on a medical level, and I qualify for it, but not for nothing, it's cheaper on the streets.
Oh, wow.
It's the same quality.
No, well, it's a shame. It's something that we are going, if anything, we're going to be looked at in 100 years, and they're going to be like, wait, what? Adults You arrested them for doing what? Were they hurting anybody? No.
Were
Was
they
it more
forcing the
dangerous than
weed
the other
down
drugs
kids'
that you
throats?
legalized?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol is more. It's insane. It's a really insane system that we live under.
100%.
But um, I don't see voting for a Republican getting that any further down the line. Do you see any Republicans who have come out for the legalization of marijuana? Because I think that's totally just
Um,
a left-wing progressive argument.
no, I don't think because see, the Republicans get so damn stuck on well, we still have to research. Like, there's a lot of car accidents in Colorado. Like, is that because of marijuana legalization? It's like, or it could just be that there's more people in Colorado because there's marijuana legalization. You know what I mean? Like,
And
I was listening to like Dan Crenshaw and Joe Rogan a while back. I like Dan Crenshaw, but
I do too.
Rogan was asking him about it, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm willing to look at the information, but generally speaking, I just don't see it. I don't see why it makes it better to make it just legal across the board instead of just for medicinal purposes. Kids get into it and blah blah blah. And yeah, that's
And kids
frustrating.
don't get into it if it's illegal.
Yeah, right. Right.
Like, we're not already dealing with this issue, but we're spending tons of dollars on police officers dealing with this
Right.
issue, creating situations that could be harmful.
Right. There's an episode of Always Sunny, and I know this is just way off topic, but it's kind of funny.
I've never watched that show. Is it good?
Oh my God, yes, dude, must
Yeah.
watch. It's
Okay.
just pure comedy brilliance. But Danny DeVito's character is trying to pass driving school because he hasn't had an active driver's license since like 1982 or something like that. But he's got the same license from then, and that's what he's been driving around with. So he's got to go to driving school, and he's trying to cheat off of this kid who's like 16 getting his license for the first time.
Okay.
And he's like, the kid's like, all right, what's in it for me? He's like, I'll get you, I'll buy you beer. And the kid's like, dude, I haven't been ID'd since middle school. Like, weed, cigs, blow. And he's like, dude, I'm in high school. I get all that shit. And it's just like,
that's really funny. Yeah. That's I'm gonna have to watch it now. That's really funny.
Dude, it's comedy brilliance. And they just play jump rope with the line between left and right, just ridiculousness. I think generally they're all liberals, but they're also not afraid to call out some of the liberal,
BS. Yeah, no, I think we need more of that for sure. All right, I think that's basically it. I think UBI was my other one, but I don't think Joe is anywhere near that one. So I'll have to wait for Mr. Yang in 2024.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah. So I've got to get off of here at midnight. We got like 14 minutes? Is it possible for you to get through my list? Your list?
Mine's much shorter than that.
Okay.
I only have a couple of reasons.
All right.
Reason number one, Trump has governed far more conservatively than I think anybody expected him to. Rolling back regulations, cutting taxes, just generally making it easier to run a business in America, generally speaking. And that's not to say he's been conservative with the spending. He's been dog shit with the spending. But, he sticks to one, half dozen the other. Nobody's good at spending. And that was a big thing that he campaigned on. And okay, fine.
Okay.
Beyond that, he has kept more of his campaign promises than I think any president of my lifetime that I know of. He cut the taxes like he said he would. He rolled back regulations. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Every presidential candidate of the last 30 years at least has promised to do that and didn't. He hasn't started a new war. The only president in our lifetime to do that. He's even brokered peace deals in the Middle East. I mean, love him or hate him, he's doing some good shit.
Okay. I don't think he's the only. I mean, I don't think Jimmy Carter started a war. Obama didn't start any wars, did he? I mean, the Libya one, but he didn't start it. He got involved a little bit.
I mean,
I've looked into that one. I think that he was trying to make a political calculation and like who should he support and unfortunately, I think there was a lot of unrest there. But okay, I'll give you that
Single-handedly
one.
decimated an entire nation without congressional approval. That counts as starting a war.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know how long ago Jimmy Carter was president, but
Yeah,
I don't think that
76
was
to
my
80.
lifetime. Yeah, that wasn't
No,
my lifetime.
he never fired a bullet
Yeah,
during his presidency, something like
yeah.
that.
Trump's fired some bullets. Well,
Sure.
some missiles actually, but
Yeah.
he hasn't started a war. You got to give him that. He let's see, where did I leave off? Didn't start a
All right. You
war.
were talking about promises kept, promises made. This is Trump's
Yeah.
big slogan.
He's built most of the wall that people cared so much about.
3 miles
Yeah, 3 miles of wall.
of new wall. Yes.
And
Has reinforced a lot of it.
sure, there was already some pre-existing wall there too.
Right.
But he's appointed, what is it? I think he's at 200 judges now. That was a big part of his campaign that he promised to do. Like I said, love him or hate him, he's sticking to his word in a way that most presidents that I've seen in my lifetime have not. Even if I don't like the word, at least he's sticking to it. It wasn't just an empty campaign promise. Yeah, I'm going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. 8 years later, I just couldn't get around to that one, you know?
No, that's true. I mean, he doesn't mind being the piranha, being the person who's like, especially when it comes to global politics, like he'll go out there and he'll diss the entire UN. He'll diss, the oh gosh, it's not the United Nations. What's
NATO.
NATO? There you go. And so a couple of those, what I'm thinking of when he said drain the swamp, I felt like, so who's going to be your Treasury Secretary? Oh, a Goldman Sachs employee? That doesn't sound like draining the swamp to me. Who's going to be your Education Secretary? Oh, a billionaire who donates to education, who's never been a teacher, never went to public school. That's your educate.
Never had to take out a student loan for the kids.
Doesn't sound like draining the swamp to me. I'm going to build the wall. I'm going to have Mexico pay for it. Mexico hasn't paid for it, and the wall's only 3 more miles over your 4 years. He has appointed a lot of judges, but he's had the Senate as well. And Obama had 180 appointments stalled because he didn't have the Senate. So the Democrats could have said Obama appointed 180, but we didn't have the Senate, which is because of that stupid James Madison's foe back in the 1700s, 18. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say he kept all of his promises. I said he kept more of his promises.
No, you're right. And I think there's a lot of people who do really appreciate that. And especially with the Jerusalem thing. I mean, again, not my cup of tea. I think that's a really complex issue, but World War II, and then we take the land from the Palestinians. I think they have a pretty good argument for, being a little bit upset, but also you can't have terrorist organizations. That's not the way to fight for your political right. It's a very complicated situation between the Palestine community and Jerusalem.
And I'm not nearly an expert on the subject either, but to say that the World War II happened and then the Jews just got Israel, I mean, there's 3,000 years of tradition of
Very
Jews
true.
in Israel, from Moses to Sandy Koufax. Like,
you're right. Like we said, that could be a whole podcast in itself. Probably multiple podcasts. It's an interesting one though. It drives me crazy whenever I've got this huge map in one of my rooms in the house, and if you look on it for Israel, it's like this big. It's so tiny. Israel is just this itty bitty little country, and to think that we talk about them and there's so much, political animosity back and forth because of this space on this planet that is just so tiny. It's mind-boggling, but because it has so much weight, it should be talked about a lot.
So I don't know how much time do I got left. Where are we at?
So sorry, 8 minutes.
All right, cool. I got plenty of time. So yeah, point number one, he's governed more conservatively than anyone ever thought he would. He's kept many of his promises.
Okay.
Down. Reason number two, the biggest thing I think there's two things the Democrats have to run on against Donald Trump: his rhetoric and COVID-19.
Okay.
COVID-19, Joe Biden basically said, I'm going to do the exact same thing, except I'll probably lock us back down again, is basically what we got out of him. So I'm going to call COVID-19 a wash. I don't see anything Joe Biden has said that's going to be better than what we've got, or that would actually save the 100,000 lives or 200,000 lives that he's talking about. I'm going to call that a wash. I'm not going to run based on that. The rhetoric, his rhetoric sucks. I wish like hell someone would just give him a fake phone and say, tweet away, Don. Like there was an episode of The Office where Creed wanted to start a blog. And so Ryan opened a Word document and put a website name at the top of it. She's like, I read some of it, and even the internet's not ready for this shit. I wish someone would do that with Trump. I swear to God, I do. Not to say there's not some gems. I mean, buckshot approach. 100, out of 100 shots, one of them's got to be funny.
God, the thing that you have to tell the president of the United States, I mean, that's one of the biggest worries for me too. Like, this is supposed to be the leader of the free world. We shouldn't have to treat him like he's a toddler who's getting a cell phone for the first time.
I understand. But all of this was baked into the cake when I voted for him last time.
That's true.
I can't think of one thing he said in the last 4 years that was a new low for Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like, people say, well, how would you feel if Obama had said that? It's like, I took Obama much more seriously as a president than I take Donald Trump, or as a person even. Of course I'd be outraged if Obama said that. But this, I mean, from scale of 1 to 10, that was a solid 4, what he just said. You know what I mean? Like,
he does troll a lot, and the Democrats and the press can't seem to get off of it. When he says, what'll really make him mad is
trolling teeth.
Yeah. Tell him when I run for my 4th term. And they just, the next thing they're like writing down, Trump is going to run for 4 terms. And it's.
Did you see that commercial the Lincoln Project put out?
I didn't. I've had people tell me about the Lincoln Project. I haven't watched enough of it yet.
Dude, it's a commercial they just put out. A little kid sleeping on a couch. A mom comes and wakes him up, says, honey, you told me to wake you up and tell you what happened after the election. And the kid opens one eye and says, who won? And the mom says, Trump. And the kid goes, but I thought he could only be president 2 times. And the mom says, not anymore. And it's like, first of all, the only person to be president more than 2 terms was a Democrat in FDR.
Right.
So
4 times.
Yeah, precisely.
And then he died.
And then he died. But you're going to tell me that whatever Trump's doing, he's going to be a president for a 3rd term or a 4th? I don't know how many it was implying, but
yeah.
Anyway, it was one of the funniest commercials I ever saw. But the point I'm getting at with the rhetoric is, I think the damage is done already.
Okay.
I don't see how voting for Joe Biden undoes the damage from Trump's rhetoric. I don't see it as positive. Says some dumb shit, says some horrible shit even. Unpresidential, you betcha. Is voting him out going to fix that? I don't think so. Is voting him out going to restore any sort of dignity? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not, but not a gamble I'm willing to take.
Okay.
So that's his rhetoric, and that's where I stand with that. Thirdly, I think he is a bulwark to the radical left in a way that Joe Biden kind of pitches that he is, but he's just not. He's got Kamala Harris as his vice president, who is the most left-leaning politician in America, or up there. He's going to have AOC in charge of climate. He's going to have Bernie in charge of medicine. He's going to have Beto O'Rourke in charge of guns. Like, this is.
I don't see that happening. I don't see Beto.
This is a right-winger's fever dream. This is like, holy you can't write this.
And AOC is not in climate either. I don't see her leading anything like that.
Joe Biden has confirmed Beto's going to help him end the gun problem in America. It's already guaranteed to him, essentially.
Yeah, he wasn't my favorite politician either.
And I think, I mean, not for nothing, dude, I'm sorry, brother in arms, the left has lost its damned mind. It is just completely like, here's the pulse and here's you just jammed right up the back. Not you, but the left.
Yeah.
So far from the pulse to the point where like words don't even mean what they used to mean anymore. Defund the police. A normal person, what would you think that means? It means take the money away from the police. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying reallocate the money. Okay, so why are you saying defund the police? Antifa, we're anti-fascist. Okay, well, what do? Well, we beat the shit out of people we disagree with politically because of what they say.
Yes.
Well, that sounds a little like fascism. No, because they're the fascists, see?
Mhm.
So
Those are
just,
fair points. I think I don't know, Democrats or people who are sane minded should fight back against those kind of the violent aims from Antifa or what was the point that you said before that? Antifa.
defund the
Yeah,
police.
I mean, what is? I don't want to say stupid, but yeah, what a terrible slogan. You couldn't say
Right.
reallocate the police.
Right.
You couldn't
And
say
instead of saying that, they just say, well, no, that's not what we mean by this word that is a very clear
yeah,
definition. It's a
like
different word.
terrible slogans. Even the Black Lives Matter. It took a lot of explaining, and I support the Black Lives Matter movement, but God, you couldn't figure out a way to say that in a better way. It just seems like it was divisive, and I get it. There's arguments that I could be convinced of that, when you say save the Amazon, you're not saying fuck all other rainforests.
Yeah, all that. The
But
slogan's not the issue, it's the organization behind it under the umbrella of the statement. And it's like,
well, it does
well,
get tough. Like,
yeah, so if you don't agree with the organization, well, that means you don't agree with the sentiment. And it's like, well, no, I do believe Black Lives Matter. It's like, well, then
right.
you got to fall in line. It's like, well,
But would you say that the same thing about like the Trump supporters who are supporting QAnon? Like you don't support QAnon, but I mean, are you going to say screw all the Trump supporters?
I'm still not 100% sure what QAnon is.
It's a conspiracy that Democrats are like drinking the blood of babies and pedophiles. I mean, it's
Well, we've known that for years. This isn't
oh my,
new.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
Okay, so
Yeah,
let's see.
sorry, I'll stop interrupting you.
All right, last one, and then we're done.
Okay.
This has never been important to me in any other election that I've ever known of, at least anyone I participated in.
Uh-huh.
But I would much rather a President Mike Pence, for some reason, God forbid something happens to Trump, than I would a President Kamala Harris.
Okay. No, I think that's why the vice president is a very, very important pick. It's why a lot of people didn't go with John McCain in 2008 because he chose Sarah Palin.
I would take President Palin over President Harris too. And the thing is, like even most Democrats don't believe Joe Biden will survive a full term. Think about that. You are willing to cast your vote to a presidential candidate who you don't believe will physically, literally survive a first term just to get Orange Man out of the office. Isn't that scary a little bit?
Well, unless you support the vice presidential candidate and support the people that he puts
But
around.
nobody supported the vice presidential candidate. She dropped out of the primaries before they got to California, her home state, because she wasn't going to get a delegate.
Because she called Joe Biden a racist.
That's how I said literally.
She wasn't totally wrong. Like if she would have stuck to her guns.
That moment when she said that, I said, that's the vice president right there. That
really?
I swear to God, you can ask my fiance, my brother-in-law, any of them. I said at that moment, Kamala Harris just locked in her VP nomination based on that statement right there. I called it.
That was the moment when I was like, oh my God, please don't let Joe Biden win and pick Kamala Harris. Please. If we do anything as Democrats, just don't let Joe Biden pick the one person who called him a racist on stage, be the person that he says should be his number two.
Too. She called him that too. She said she believes the accusations. So it's like, what does that say about her character? Was it either shady politics?
Yeah, and the way that she laughs when she's asked this question.
Just conviction that you don't care that he's a sexual assaulter / racist. You just went in. And that's scary either way you slice it. You're either willing to try to ruin a man's life to get ahead, or you're willing to ignore how horrible he is to get ahead. But either way, it's about Kamala, baby. And that's terrifying to me.
Yeah, you make some good points there. And while I support her views in politics generally, especially like over Mike Pence, who was somebody who supported like gay conversion therapy and things like this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's never been substantiated.
he didn't support gay conversion therapy. I'll look that up, but that's something I don't have concrete evidence of, but it's definitely
No, but you
something I've
heard it,
heard.
and that's really all it takes.
That's terrible though, if that's something that he's been accused of for such a long time. And
Mhm.
something that's like the main thing that I know about Mike Pence is
Right.
that he was that's terrible.
Isn't
But
that a
yeah,
shame?
so, well, like I said, I mean, so I laid out the reasons why I support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party in general, I guess. But
Mhm.
it's going to be hard to make me tell you that I love both of these candidates. They're just, I felt like they were the worst choices for us as the Democratic Party.
Trust me, man. I have said since last time around, I'm sick to my stomach that I have to vote for this man. Like,
Oh,
you couldn't have just given me somebody,
right.
anybody.
Well, hopefully we're still doing this in 2024, and we'll both be much more satisfied with the people.
Speaking of 2024, this will be the very last thing we can call it an end.
Okay.
4 years in the future, we're having the same conversation. Who's the candidate that you're explaining to me that you're supporting?
Okay, I'm explaining to you Andrew Yang, as we have not recovered from our economic downturn. 4 years later, there are more people out of work because of the driverless cars and trucks that are on our roads for the first time. And we need a way to get people enough money to pay for their houses and their food. And Andrew Yang has been saying this since 2019, baby. So wear the math hats all day, make America think harder, and yeah, I think that's the candidate who I am explaining to you. And he'll be running against Pete Buttigieg. So it'll be Andrew Yang versus Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I like that. So I'm gonna throw a wild card here. 2024, Nikki Haley, for two
Oh,
reasons.
I think
Reason number one, she is a certified badass. Take no shit, take no prisoners. Just, you saw her at the UN, you saw her calling out the Human Rights Council or whatever. It's like, look at all these people you have that just ruin human rights on this council. How serious do you think we take this shit? Certified badass. She was a
it sounds like
great.
a carnival. Like, you saw her at the UN, you saw her in the United States Senate, and now
And you'll
you're
see
going to
her in
see her.
2024 running
Yeah.
for president of the United States. But reason
Okay.
number two, because I would just die to see the left lose their minds that the Republicans nominated the very first woman president in United States history, and they had to vote against her. That's what I'm looking forward to in 2024.
Well, I think, you know what? I will be so much happier if we're debating Nikki Haley versus Andrew Yang in 2024. 1,000 times happier if those are the two candidates. So this will
Hell
be
yeah.
a really fun podcast to listen to in a couple of years and see where we're at.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. All right, you want to close this out, Mr. Justin?
All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. Another exciting rendition of Across the Aisle. I'm Justin Collins. This is my good friend, Case. Sorry. We'll figure this out one of these times.
Yeah, one of these days we'll get it. Try harder next time, my friends.
Good night, bud.
Later.